how the U.S. supply shortages are connected to the dollar, the inflation, and the CPI, and also how it's connected to the deflation in the global economy. So here we go, let's dive right in. We know that in 2020 we all got that big stimulus check, and the PPP loans went out, and that inflated the money supply. This is a chart of M2. The editor will show a real chart of M2, but I've drawn this one out for us to use. The CPI for November is 6.8%. And this is year over year from last November to this November. Well, since then, since the government has injected all this fiscal money and fiscal spending into the economy, what we've had is demand at the same rates or lower. And since they were paying people to stay home, we've also had supply chains disrupted, and supplies went down as demand has went up. Now, naturally, because of the laws of supply and demand, when you have more demand and less supply, you will get inflation on the supply side, because as more people are trying to buy and they got more demand and we've got less stuff to buy, well, that just drives prices up. And normally the cure for high prices is high prices, but in this example we're going to show how I believe that all that money, because of these supply has went down, has been trapped inside the U.S. and we've not been able to export our inflation like we normally would. Now, in a closed environment with lower supply with higher demand would ensue higher prices. That's what we would have. That's what that's what the outcome would be. But the U.S. has the world reserve currency. So the U.S. dollar is the currency that all the other governments and most of them use to settle different transactions inside the global economy. Now, how do we get the U.S. dollars out there? We have banks that do lending just like we do in the United States, but they call them Eurodollars, and they lend to the euro dollar out in the global, and it's just U.S. dollars, the same as what we use here, and they just use them out there. But another way that they get the dollars into the global economy is through our exports. Now, when we started this global reserve currency in the 1940s, the U.S. was a major manufacturer. We were major exporters. We exported a lot of goods, a lot of food, you name it. We made it here, we exported it. A lot of stuff stamped made in USA. Now, what we do, we've become a consumer-driven economy. We import our goods and we export dollars. And we have the twin trade deficits, and the editor will help us out and show us that chart of our trade deficits. So what we do, we export these dollars so that the global economy can run. And these dollars get outside the U.S. so that these other corporations and the other entities that transact in the global economy using U.S. dollars, that's how they get them. They sell us stuff. We pay for it in dollars. We export those dollars to the other nations. Now, how all this is connected? Well, since our supply chains have been disrupted, there's not been as many of those imported goods as we have all seen on the news. All these ships sitting outside the port of Long Beach and out off the coast of California can't get to port. They can't get to port to bring in these goods. We've all seen the empty shelves. We know there's nothing coming in much for us to buy. So if we ain't buying anything because of the supply chain disruptions, we've still got the same demand. That's how we got our CPI here. But now you've got the Eurodollar curve, it's inverted, and the treasury yield curve is flattened, signaling deflation in the global economy. So what they're saying is they're not expecting to see as much economic activity in the upcoming years, that there's an issue that they ain't seeing it. My theory is that the issue is that we can't import the goods for Americans to buy because our economy is consumer driven. We don't make hardly anything here in the U.S. anymore. So we can't get our goods imported in order for us to buy those goods and export the dollars, and therefore being deflationary on a global scale, because our number one export is U.S. dollars. So it doesn't matter. China can make everything they want to and try to send it over, but if the supply chains are disrupted and we can't get those goods to the shelves, and Americans can't pay for those goods with those U.S. dollars, then they can't get exported back to the Chinese company for them to pay their dollar-denominated debts, or to either take those U.S. dollars and sell them into the financial economy on the FX market for what they need to pay their loans in through an FX swap. So essentially, those dollars are trapped in the U.S., which only causes our CPI numbers to go higher and higher. October was 6.2%, and that was the highest it had been on record in years and years, and now we're at 6.8%. But because we've got all this money floating inside the U.S. that's not getting out because we're not buying the stuff to export the dollars. That is my theory on how all this is connected.